She, the lost soul. She's all about a dream like Dr. Martin Luther King. She's trying to make moves because her daughter wants to sing. But she's stuck in a trap because her ex is locked up in the Bing. He used to beat her down like she stepped up in the ring. She was always there for him when he needed her most. She would even ride for him when he told her grab the toast. Never any hesitation, talking about it he would boast. But behind closed doors, abused to the point of death almost. She knew she had to get away because it only got worse. Her mom went through the same thing, it could only be a curse. She was forced to do what he said because to her he would coerce. Vivid dreams at nighttime crying because all she could see was a hearse. She tried to do what she could to get away while he was behind bars. She didn't know he posted bail, she's too worried about permanent scars. Meanwhile, he's at the door, said he's going to beat her till she sees stars. Daughter crying at the foot of her mom's body, this time he took it too far. Little girl so scared, her mom was here then gone in an instant. She blamed herself all the time for not being more persistent. She told her mom to leave him many times, but they grew distant. Her mom was too in love, so the daughter became resistant. She wishes she could get back the time they both lost in a fight. It's too late now because her sunny days turn into nights. Her mom took that one-way ticket on the Pearly Gate flight just because a man decided to beat her with all his might. Growing up in foster care, no family to call her own. Jumping from this family to the next, she had no stable home. Getting older, just turned 16, now she thinks she's all grown. Out in the streets, nobody to save her, so now her mind's blown. Something that was meant to be casual, all of a sudden an addiction. She was supposed to be a star, this was never in her prediction. These streets are raising this child to live through trial, tribulation, and affliction. She's smoking on the pipe, so inside and out, her life is on constriction. Now she's waking up every morning nauseated, thinking she was sick. So she takes herself to the doctor to find out what it is. But the doctor explained to her that in months she would feel a kick. She thinks out loud and says she ain't ready to raise a kid. What is she gonna do now? This drug has her in too deep. With this baby on the way, wondering if she should keep. 6 months go by and the baby is ready to be born. The mother is clean now. To her baby she has sworn never to smoke again, this child being born a sick baby. She knew she had to do better because at 20 she's still a young lady. Decided to better herself, first step was starting school. Nobody but herself is who she really had to prove. Now the years went by and she's no longer living that way. Young lady grew up, at the end all she needed was to pray. Husband and kid, this one struggling teen cleaned up her life. She is no longer the lost soul, now a loving mother and wife.
Hi, Mari.
Thank you for joining. Okay.
Hi, Amanda.
Oh, Amanda's joined. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you for tuning in to Uncommon Women. I'm Jenny Lee. This is Shanera.
I'm Shanera.
And Trish Sclafani.
That was good, yeah.
Well, as you can see, we're going live with our guest speaker where we're going to talk about on abortion. There's not going to be no editing for those that listen through iTunes and Google Play. We're going to have download it, but it's just going to be all live and just raw. So just tune in and hope you listen in and go ahead, Trish.
So today we actually have Trish. She's been married for about 30 years. She has 3 sons and 3 grandchildren. She loves to travel and ride horses, spend time with her family and friends. And she's also always looking for the opportunity to speak to empower women. And today she's actually going to share a story about abortion. Before we actually get into that, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood, growing up, and how things were with your family?
So I love how you said raw.
Uncut.
So raw's good. Raw's good.
I mean, well, it's being uncut, and just...
Yeah, so my childhood, that's a great place to start. I always start there when I think about how I ended up being a post-abortive woman and just the things that led to that. My mother got pregnant with me at 15, and it was in 1965. I'm much older than these 2 young, beautiful women between me. And so she got pregnant with me at 15, back when abortion was still illegal. And my biological father was 17. And, honestly, my mother told me that they thought about abortion, but they knew it would be illegal. So some of the things that my mother faced being a 15-year-old teenage mom in the 60s was the doctors really pushed for her to put me up for adoption and just not raise me. And so I really realized that only recently, in the last couple years, that the enemy really did not want my life to be a life of filled with God and freedom and abundance and destiny. So really just my childhood of growing up without a father, being abandoned, and really essentially orphaned to not having a father, really left me vulnerable to making decisions to choose abortion when I became a teenager. Because I don't know about you ladies, but when you don't have a father who affirms you and who's there for you and can speak into your life so that sets the stage for you to be a woman, you really seek that out and you look for that. And I remember at about probably 13 or 14 really realizing that, wow, I can get attention from boys. And that
At 13?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, this is like, I know it's happening a lot younger these age, but
Yeah, it is.
And I think only because I was very quiet, I was very introverted. We moved a lot as a little girl. I always had this sense of not belonging, and I was kind of in the way, and kind of went from my grandparents to my mother. Now my mother, because she was young, she did the best that she could and with what she could.
Right.
She had an alcoholic mother, and so she was raised very dysfunctionally, and you can only impart what you know.
Right.
Yep.
And so she did the best that she could, and she's an amazing mother, but she, made some mistakes like we all do.
Right.
So kind of just some things that happened to me as a child. I wasn't really going to get into this, but maybe I should. As a little girl, I was fondled by a stepfather. And so, so there's things that happen to us that affect us. And so when I was about 14, I just remember boys liking me, and you get peer pressure and all the things, and my first boyfriend, losing my virginity, and I mean, I didn't like it, but I liked the attention. And at the time, my mom was a single mom working 2 jobs, and she was still in her 20s and kind of finding her freedom, and really wasn't paying attention to what I was doing. And so lo and behold, I just got into a relationship with a guy a little bit older than me, and got pregnant at 16. Now, one of the things that my mother would always say as a young girl is all the things that she gave up to have me at 15. And so we place these inner vows in our heart, and I remember as a rebellious young teenager saying, like, I will never be my mother. I will never be my mother, with this hatred, and
Resentment and stuff like that.
Yeah. And so lo and behold, I get pregnant at 16, and I said, I'm not going to be my mother. And so I had an option, and the option was abortion. And even though back in the early 80s, you could make an abortion appointment on a Friday and go in and have it done. There was no ultrasound. There was no counseling. They talked to you maybe for 10 minutes prior to the procedure. And I just really felt like I had no other option. There was a lot of fear. The boyfriend at the time, although we were in love, so I thought, he came from a broken family too. So there was no resources, and really felt that this was the best option. And I, one of the things that stands out to me, I can tell you this, I remember almost every detail of that day. I remember the drive there.
Did you go by yourself? Or
No, he drove me.
He drove you?
He drove me. I remember the drive there. I remember the building. I remember I can still remember what it looks like. But one of the things that I remember walking back with the nurse and getting me ready for the procedure, and I asked her if it was going to hurt, or what if there was going to be some kind of discomfort or pain. And she said, it's going to be some light cramping, but after today, you'll never have to think about this again.
Wow.
And those words, I still think about it today, and it's like 30 some years later, but I don't think about it in the same way. But those words plagued me for a really long time, probably for about 10 years after the abortion. I remembered thinking, that woman said I'd never think about this again, and I think about it every day. Until I just stuffed it so far that I stopped thinking about it and numbed all those feelings and emotions. So probably about less than a year later, with the same boyfriend, I got pregnant again. And I can tell you, I don't know why. I think it was almost this innate feeling that I needed to replace my pregnancy. And just this overwhelming sense I wanted my own family. I think because I had such a dysfunctional family, I desired to have family and belonging. And
a lot of women go through that.
Yeah. And I always ask myself, like, why didn't I take birth control?
I was just about to ask you
I mean, I did.
After the first one, like, okay, maybe we should protect ourselves.
Yes. I mean,
Well,
I was on the pill, but I didn't take it regularly. It was I was very broken as a teenage girl.
Well, when you're young too, and like you said, being broken, you're just focused on life around you. You're not really focused. Sometimes it's just forget. And it's not I'm saying maybe you did it purposely, but it just happens.
The responsibility is like, oh, well, I'll just take it tomorrow. Like, not thinking you could get pregnant again, too.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think I thought, too, when I did get pregnant again, my mindset was, well, clearly that first abortion didn't hurt me because I got pregnant again. And I think in my mind, like, I wanted to be with this guy, but yet it just wasn't healthy. And all around me, because abortion was only legal like maybe 8 or 9 years, so it was still this whirlwind of like women's rights and women have choices and it's just a blob of tissue and all these lies you believe about it. And so all of my girlfriends were having abortions. Like, oh yeah, I had 3, I had 6, I just had like it was a form of birth control. And so you just separated the fact that this was a human life and you didn't even look at that. It wasn't a moral issue. This is very selfish and just it was a way to take care of a problem.
Like a plan B.
Like a plan B. Thank you. Yeah. We didn't have that back then. So I find myself pregnant again, probably only 9 months or so after the first abortion. And I had already started using drugs to numb my feelings more excessively after the first abortion. Blocked a lot of my feelings, really wasn't from the abortion, but from childhood, from the molestation and just abandonment and lack of love and nurture. So when I chose the second abortion, he pretty much just walked away from the situation and said, like, well, I can't help you. And I had to ask a friend to help me get money.
Financially.
And to take me there. And I did that. And, you know, that within itself is trauma. There's a lot of trauma in abortion, and I think that we don't use the word trauma with abortion, but looking back and what I know now about inner healing and freedom is a lot of trauma in our lives. And there's trauma, and then there's trauma that has PTSD. And so, like, but I think even abortion is a form of PTSD. Not to belittle anybody that has it from, like, the war or something very traumatic, but there's things that trigger these responses in our life. And so I had the second abortion, and it's crazy because now what I do in ministry, I don't have any memory of that second abortion at all. Wow. It was just, I completely shut down. So that happened.
Now, what was your relationship with your mom? Like, did she know any of this going on? I know she was working a lot because she's obviously trying to take
So
care
my
of
mom
you.
did find out about my first abortion.
Okay.
She did find out. and she found out the day that I was going for the abortion.
Oh, wow.
For some weird reason, I decided to go to school and write myself, I have to leave early from my mother note.
We all done it.
Which is like so odd. It was almost like I wanted to get caught.
Mm-hmm.
And because normally I would just skip school and pay the consequences of suspension or something, right?
They called her.
They called her, and she's like, no. So she shows up at the school. They call me to the office. I'm sitting in the office. It was a Votech school back in the 80s. You know, we went to Votech in the morning and at the high school in the afternoon. And I'm sitting in the office. It was like, I don't know, 10 in the morning, crying because I have this abortion scheduled in the afternoon. And now they called my mother, and I'm like, oh no. And so she came in, and she instantly looked at me, and she said, "You're pregnant." And
Wow.
I was like, I am. And she said, well, she knew, because she said, what time's your appointment? And I told her. And she was like, well, I'll take you. And I think my mom really, has a lot of guilt with that today, and really we talk about it, and it's painful for her. And I always say, like, Mom, you thought you were doing the right thing for me, like you didn't know at the time. My mom wasn't a Christian. We weren't Christians. Like, we loved God, we believed in God, we knew about Jesus, but we didn't live our life that way. So I said, Greg, my boyfriend at the time, is taking me, and so she was like, okay. And I came home that afternoon. She came upstairs. I went up to bed because you're crampy, and you just, it's a lot. It's actually more mental and emotional than physical. And I went up to bed, and she came up and checked on me, said, how are you? And then we never talked about it again. Never, ever.
So after that occurrence, did you guys talk about birth, like any preventing it happening again, or you just didn't connect at all?
No, I think that was an awkward conversation with my mom, and I don't think she had it with her mom. And
That's probably why.
Yeah, we didn't talk about when you get your period.
No.
We didn't talk about
Just
any
like,
of that.
I'll take you to the store to go get your stuff.
And I think back then that's what happens.
A lot of people didn't communicate with their children.
Didn't communicate, and that's why some of the kids then, did what they wanted, because it was never spoken of, or it was not supposed to be spoken of. Yeah. From what I was told.
And I think, don't you, that puts so much shame on sexuality and on women. It's a normal thing for a young girl to menstruate and have a period.
Right.
It's the way God designed us. But if we don't talk about it and like, it's okay, it's part of being a woman, there's this shame attached to it, like, ew, this dirty thing,
And getting your advice from other peers.
Yeah, exactly. We go to that little class in 5th grade at school, and you have the little bag that you're trying to hide. Yeah. So it was very not something that I had the freedom to talk about. So after the abortion, my mom, I knew she was torn up about it, but she didn't know how to talk about it with me, and we didn't talk about it. Okay. And then fast forward, I graduated high school. I used a lot of drugs and alcohol and just relationship after relationship, hoping to just fill this void and numb this pain, never really thinking my pain came from my choices. It's crazy, right? The way that we're so blinded by that. Yeah. And I ended up meeting someone, was in love. It was my friend's brother, and we hooked up, and again, I stopped taking birth control to get pregnant. And this doesn't work, ladies. It's a travel. Yes.
It happens. It does more than often.
Yeah. It does happen. It does happen.
So I never.
But it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. I'm like sitting here like.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Don't trap no guys with no babies.
Because you're going to be, But I ended up, I wanted to have that baby because I wanted to be with that guy. So I had my son Kyle, and his father never changed to this day. He's still in and out of prison and just struggles with drug addiction. It was drug addiction.
Okay.
So, but I had my son Kyle, and single mom. At least I'm out of high school, and kind of going back to school and doing what I needed to do.
Okay.
Still trying to work it out with his dad, and about 13 months after my son was born, I was in a relationship with someone I worked with, kind of just to make his dad jealous. And I got pregnant, and that was difficult because I already knew I had life inside of me. I totally knew what I was doing was wrong. I didn't want to be with that guy, and I didn't want to have 2 kids from 2 different dads. I was just in this mindset, and
Just to make him mad, so...
Yes, and to this day, I don't even think this guy, that his dad even knows that I had an abortion from somebody else. I will never forget the day I called this guy I worked with, and I told him I was pregnant, and he was excited, and because he really liked me a lot, and I was like, yeah, but I'm not having the baby, and I worked a couple extra shifts at my job, waitressing, to get enough money, and I had a girlfriend drive me, and I had the abortion. And again, I don't remember a lot of details about that. That was in 1986. And just that I remember driving there and the people outside of the abortion clinic yelling.
That's when they started protesting?
Yeah, protesting. And my girlfriend yelling back at them, she already has a little kid. And, and again, so selfish and so just fear and just only thinking about myself. And so I went through with the abortion and never thought about that guy's feelings.
You're good.
Yeah,
I was just about to say that. I was like, well, how did he feel about you?
I'm like, how did he feel?
You didn't care.
No, I didn't care because I knew I didn't want to be with him. I didn't love him. He was not... I wanted to be with my son's dad. Yeah, so basically I sacrificed that child to be with a guy that, oh my gosh, was like the worst thing for me. So, and I really realized since I've had my own healing through the abortions and started the Deeper Still ministry, that how much abortion affects men and how much it hurts them. And we rob them of being a father, even though the society has talked them into believing the lie that they don't have a voice and has empowered women to make these own choices. We really take that choice away from them. And so anyway, God's still healing me in that area. I'm still working on that area of, in my own life, of what I did to that man, that guy. So anyway, that's how I ended up having the 3 abortions. And nobody knew about 3 except for probably 2 or 3 people in my life, girlfriends that I would confide in, and they were in the same boat as me anyway. So we all kind of had this thing on each other, and it's crazy how abortion is legal in our nation, but yet we don't talk about it. Yet when you make a decision to go and have one, it's this secrecy because of the shame that's attached to it. And I'm thankful that right now, I think in our country and really globally, we talk about it.
Yeah.
Even though it's controversial and it's a hard thing to talk about, but whenever you say the word abortion, it's like, ew. It's just an ugly word, right? So it's getting into the light, and that's good. Yeah.
That's good. So how do you feel about, because you said that you felt as though you were being selfish, you had a choice, you didn't care about his feelings. How do you feel about women that want to have the abortion and the man doesn't? Do you think that affects them as well?
Oh yeah. I've met, since I've started in this ministry, several men that really struggle with unforgiveness and anger, really have formed a opinion against women because of a woman that chose abortion and to take their child's life away. Again, only Christ can cover that, because you can try to stuff it and cover it up, but it's temporary, right? And only Christ can take that pain away from them. So Yeah, it's hard. People don't realize the effects of abortion when you choose an abortion, because not only does it affect you, it affects the father, it affects the grandparents, it affects siblings, future siblings, because eventually I had to tell my children. Yeah, so after God had called me into this ministry of what I do now, I knew I had to tell my kids, because my whole house is like abortion stuff. Like, I had to tell. So when I sat down with my adult children, who are now 3 grown men, one of my sons is married and has a family, and I was so thankful. I remember my oldest son got his girlfriend got pregnant. They weren't married, and he was afraid to tell me. But when he came and told me, and this was before I dealt with my own abortions, when he came and he told me, he's like, "But Mom, we want to have the baby." And I remember like, wow, that's amazing, and so never shared with them. And then after, and his thought was, well, because it's wrong, because you always said it was wrong. And so I was so proud of them for not aborting my granddaughter. And she's 13 now. Aww. So, I mean, but she's, so, anyway, that's just a blessing, I think, that God gave me, that my first daughter would be a granddaughter, because I didn't have daughters. I only have 3 sons. Boys. Yeah. But I forget your question.
Oh, and I gotta remember. Wait. We were talking about how it affects men when women want to keep it.
Yeah.
So you answered that. Now, you had your son. You're a single mom. What emotions were you going through after you had the third abortion? Like, how did you transition on loving yourself again?
I didn't. I didn't.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So the effects of abortion, you know, for me personally, especially having multiple abortions, up until my son was born, I used, like I said, just the alcohol and drugs, cocaine, marijuana. Really, I wrestled with depression. I didn't know it was depression. I think I had depression as a child, and I think it was just this oppression on my life from the environment I was in.
Yes.
And
prolonged on.
Yeah, and didn't know that, and so when my son was about, eventually the relationship with his father ended, and I realized I'm much more worthy than that. Even though I lived in shame and unworthiness, I recognized that I deserve better at some point. And so I ended it with him. My mom, and she had married my stepfather, and he was a good influence when I was in my 20s. We didn't get along as teens, but I didn't have any appreciation for men.
Okay.
And I didn't understand a healthy male role or healthy male authority in your life and allowing that to take place, because I've been abandoned, wounded, and a lot of pain brought on to me through men. So that's been a long-going healing in my life even today. But I gave my life to Christ when my son was about 3 years old.
Okay.
And really, really surrendered. And just like, Lord, I understand I need a savior, and I don't want to go to bars. I don't want to continue in drugs. And I went back to school at that time to be a medical assistant. It was a big deal back then. It's not so much now, but I thought
medical assistants are still worthy.
Yeah. I didn't mean it that way. I mean, it was uncommon then. People were like, what's a medical assistant? So I went to school, to a trade school for that, and was waitressing, and gave my life to Christ, and was really trying to do the right thing with my son. And then I went to a church picnic with my parents, and that's where I met my husband that I'm married to today. And in that relationship, he just loved me through the eyes of Christ, and accepted me with all of my past, and loved my little boy. And so eventually, we got married pretty quickly. And I told him about my abortions before we
Okay.
got married, because I was like, in my past, obviously, you know, he knew.
Yeah.
He was like, I don't care, I love you. And so we got married, and, you know, I really felt like...
Did you have a wall at first?
Oh gosh, yeah.
I'm just wondering, yeah.
I had a lot of walls. I never still felt worthy, even though we got married. And he was called to ministry. So right away, I'm thrown into this world of church and ministry.
Yeah.
And he had already walked that walk for several years. And people just expected I was on the same level as him. And so it was really hard. It was more isolation for me. More pretending to be someone that I really wasn't, because I didn't know how.
Because you
be
wasn't
that
there
person.
yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So, but for walls, the walls of unworthiness were coming down, and some shame. Really, we started our family not long after we were married, and my husband would say now that I would have a certain look after I gave birth to our sons, that he knew that I was thinking about my abortions, because I would. There'd be things in my life that would trigger that thought. Yeah, and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to process it. So I would just stuff it some more. So even as a Christian, I would just go through all the Christianese things, pray, read the Bible, go to church, volunteer.
Yeah.
And I was
Keep yourself busy.
Keep yourself busy, thank you.
Yeah.
And I was like, gosh, why is there this pain? I don't know how to get rid of it. And so I would stuff it. And so I would focus on exercise. I would focus on how I looked. I would focus on how I ate. At certain points in my 20s, I was a little bit anorexic. I'd want to lose weight and exercise and get to a certain, maybe that would make me feel better. And then, or I would excessively shop and buy things, because you know, when you buy something you really want, that is endorphin
Therapy.
stuff.
Yes, that therapy.
Yeah, but it was unhealthy. It was unhealthy.
Yeah.
All the things that we can do without drugs and alcohol.
Right.
You know? So it was either not eating or eating too much, or I realized in my 30s... No balance. In my 30s, that I was in depression. And so most of in my 30s, I took Prozac because... and there was shame to that. Because as a Christian, you shouldn't be depressed.
You know how that
and
goes.
so I didn't even know. And here's the thing, ladies. I went to church. My husband's a pastor. We're in ministry. Nobody ever talked about abortion. Nobody ever talked about inner healing. Nobody ever, at least in my circle, ever... I didn't know there was such thing as healing with abortion. I thought that this was something I was just going to take to my grave. I'm a second-class Christian. I will just always have this regret. And I realized what it is was, I knew God forgave me, but I never forgave myself. And so I lived in shame and the guilt of it. And that was there. And every time I had my last pregnancy, I had a miscarriage when I was about 31, 32, I think. And right away, I hadn't thought about my abortions for a while. But as soon as I lost that baby, I knew that it was retribution for the abortions. At least I thought that's what it was. God doesn't work that way. There's no retribution in his kingdom. So, anyway, that's kind of, I just kept going on that whole cycle of the shame and not knowing how to get out from under it.
Wow. Also, my question is, while having these abortions, did you ever think about any future consequences?
Gosh, no. I never thought that it would affect me the way that it did.
Or, or have anything internal, like would it have prevented you to have kids in the future?
Well, that's the crazy thing. Because I got pregnant again, I thought, well, obviously the first abortion didn't hurt anything because I'm getting pregnant.
Okay.
So no, I didn't think that it would ever affect me physically. This is the way that I believe Satan works with deception, is that I never realized that a lot of the darkness I lived in was primarily, I think, because I invited a spirit of death not over me, really. When you partner with abortion, you really are partnering with a spirit of death. And you look at it now, and it's a death culture.
Yeah.
And what it breeds in our nation, and really globally too, is it manifests spiritually,
Yes,
as depression, oppression, even suicide. A lot of, and I'll be honest, there are times in my life where I thought, if I just end it, then you know what, just I won't be in pain anymore.
Right.
Even as a Christian, I've thought about that. So, and I know several women that recently in the last 10 years have had an abortion, that the first thing they think of when they leave the abortion clinic is, I don't want to live anymore. And that's a spirit. That is a spirit of death, and it is death. You are killing your a unique individual who has a destiny. So I couldn't think about all that. Like I couldn't think that my 3 children actually were children. And I couldn't even say the word abortion. I couldn't. One of the reasons of that was I never repented for the sin in my life. So that sin was still there, unrepented for, and therefore Satan still had his hand in that and could move my life any way, like a joystick, you know, of how I maneuvered all that pain.
Okay.
So.
All right. Even with that, do you think, like, from what I hear, like, a lot of women, it doesn't affect them when they have an abortion? Some women go along in life and just, they're okay with that. Can they really accept that?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Burying it? You think they're burying it?
Yeah, I've talked to women who are believers and who have God in their life, and they realize they regret it and it was a mistake. Maybe they wouldn't say it was a mistake because it changed their circumstances, but they regret taking the life, and they recognize the consequences, the effects in their heart personally from it. I have friends that aren't believers in Christ, and the trauma of it is like right there. And I think the older a woman gets, or even the father of a lost child to abortion they realize, wow, I would have had a kid, or right now they would have been this old, or they always go back to the what ifs. And so to answer your question, I think that everybody who has chosen abortion lives with some kind of form of regret or guilt, or there's something connected to that.
Do you think that, well, at the time when they have it and they're young and living life, that they don't feel the guilt now, but I think eventually as they get older and they're in old age, it probably comes to them.
Absolutely.
So, and because of course that's, I like you said, that it's trauma, and I personally think that it becomes a big thing in their life. They might not realize it at the time, but I think as they later on in life, I think it really does affect people.
Absolutely.
And I've heard, I've had people in my life say, no, it doesn't bother me, but and everybody to each of their own,
right.
You know, everybody's going to do what they want, and I'm not judging them on what they want to do with their life and how they want to go about things. But in my head, I've always thought about, but wouldn't you regret that later on in life? Because, you know, like, we do things at the time that we think is the right choice, and then later on, because I've done, like, you made your choices, and it's affected you later on in life. So I think that's just how it is. Like, we being young, it does affect us far deeper in our life later on as we get older.
Oh, I think it affected me in my life from that very first abortion. I just couldn't, I didn't see it that way.
Oh, okay.
But as I got older, I realized, and actually it was only through my relationship with Jesus Christ, where I think he showed me that part of these areas you need to go back to, it's time to deal with those abortions.
Yes.
And that's painful, because you have to, now I'm looking at myself as this, you know, woman of God, who I have to look at this, that I took the life of 3 of my children.
Right.
I mean, that's heavy. And so, but really, he meets you there with so much love and so much grace and so much mercy.
Yes.
You know, he never judged me. I judged myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyone that wants to repent and really accept his forgiveness, and he did forgive me. He forgave me of that even before I chose to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like before I even stepped foot in the abortion clinic, he already forgave me. I never forgave myself. And that was such a revelation for me. I thought I did, but I really didn't. I thought that I owed myself this internal punishment.
Okay.
You know, I'll tell you what really, when as I'm getting older, I realized somewhere in my 40s, I had a lot of tragic
You're
things
older
happen.
than that? Oh, you look good.
Thank you.
That's why when she said that she had a
30 years.
granddaughter was 13, and I'm sitting here
Girls,
like, in
I
my
said
head,
I was born in 1965. Did you miss that?
Right.
Yeah. But when I was in my 40s, I was afraid of when I died and when I went to heaven. What if those aborted
babies.
children are there? They're not children anymore, they're adults. What am I going to, what? I was just like, what? What am I going to do with that? And it was like, God said, it's time to restore. It's time to restore.
That's very
Amen.
good.
So
Yes.
really, it was just him wooing me. I mean, my story is really his redemption story of how much he loves me. And just, and he's always pursued me, and he's always, like, he's never left me, but I wasn't ready to receive his love because of that unworthiness and shame. And so when I finally took the walls down, and I'm like, okay, Jesus, come get me. He did, like, relentlessly, and we went after that hurt, and I wasn't scared. I mean, to me, that was the biggest thing that I had to unbury, you know, and work through, and he was right there with me. So there's nothing left in my life that I can't give to him, that he's not going to be there. Yeah. Even my father wounds of abandonment and, you know, my mom, stuff that, you know, not protecting me, and just forgiving her and covering her with so much love and grace. And, you know, it's been a beautiful thing in my life. But, yeah.
That's great.
That is great.
That's great. So with you being restored, you know, fully restored by the grace of God, what are you doing now in your life to help women that may be deciding to do an abortion or have already done it, and you know, they feel as though they're good, like, well, I'm okay, today's a new day, but deep down inside.
So let me just say this. I think that it, you know, and if anybody's watching or listening, even if you thought about having an abortion, even if you made the appointment, even if you even went into the clinic, and even if you took that first pill to do the chemical abortion, the 3 pills, the RD4, whatever it's called, there's shame with that. And I think that really right now, I just want to say that I truly believe that God is releasing this beautiful grace in this season right now with abortion coming into the light. And I would just say, like, let that go. Because I know a lot of women and even men that punish themselves with, but I thought about aborting this child or my son or my daughter. And they're here. They didn't. So really, I just commend you for not choosing abortion, and say, just let all that go, because there is shame with that, and the enemy will keep you in bondage to that. So let that go, and just be like, yes, I brought life into this world. And if you did choose abortion, I hope that with my story, you know that there's hope, and there's healing, and there's restoration. And God wants, listen, the only way we're going to end abortion is those of us that have had healing in our life, that are now a strong voice for truth and for life. And we can speak out. So after I went to my retreat, it was about a year, like I said, of God just showing me, like, we need to go after these abortions, and me finally saying, okay, I'm ready. And I had no fear with that. I truly didn't. And that was a beautiful gift from him, that I was ready to go after it. And through visiting a friend's church, I heard a testimony of a man that had received healing through a Deeper Still retreat. And at that point, I never even thought about abortion affecting men. So it was such an eye-opening, beautiful testimony. And I knew, and he was older, he's in his close to 70s, so he's much older than me.
He's been living with it for a while.
And so hearing his story, I was just, wow, I need to go to this retreat. So I went home, I looked up this ministry, looked to see when their next retreat was. It wasn't for like another 5 or 6 months. I was like, I don't know if I can wait that long. But the closest was like Tennessee, so I was like, I'm going to wait that long because this is Lancaster. And I went to my first Deeper Still retreat in 2014. And at that time, they had a chapter in Lancaster County, and it completely wrecked me. But it also transformed my life forever.
Awesome. That's awesome.
And I knew when I was there, God is calling me to use this deepest pain and regret in my life to help other women. I knew being married to a pastor, being in ministry, that my story could be powerful. I knew that having 3 abortions, because there's, in God, a sin is a sin, whether you had 1 abortion or 15. But there's something about us that we judge ourselves on the number of how many. And I knew that me being vulnerable and transparent with, listen, I had 3. So, like, there's really nothing you could say that would shock me. Like, I understand. Would be powerful. And really the steps that I took after I left that day, God just continued me on this beautiful healing journey and restoration. He told me at my retreat that my 3 children in heaven, I have 2 girls and a boy, just, gave me a picture of them in my mind, and I have names for them. It's Emily, Ava, and Michael. So I truly believe that they rejoiced in heaven the day I named them, and that there's just... I actually went through a grieving process. When I got home from that retreat, although I was so full and so restored, it was the first time I started to grieve what I did and the loss. And I actually remember sitting in my bed and just like, God, I don't even care if I die tomorrow. I'll be restored to my 3 kids. And then it was like, but you got 3 kids.
You got
here.
kids.
Yeah. It's like, okay, you're right. But it was just, I can't even put a word to it, honestly. There is no word to describe what I was feeling. But really, that retreat catapulted me into my calling and destiny. And really, an even deeper healing. A year later, I started digging into the father wounds and things of abandonment. But I knew God would call me to that. I immediately wanted to be part of the team, to go for training, and I was part of the team at Lancaster County, and would serve at their other Deeper Still retreats, and then eventually leading to me starting our own chapter here, Deeper Still of Eastern Pennsylvania, I formed that chapter in 2017. So awesome. What that is, it's a ministry where we have 2 retreats a year, one in the spring and one in the fall. They are free to attend, which is crazy.
Did y'all hear that? Free ladies.
To attend. Yeah, and we totally spoil you, and it's a beautiful experience when you live in a place of unworthiness to come into a place of beautification. It's just cozy. It's a retreat center. We feed you, we love on you, and we go to that deep hurt of abortion, wounded heart. So, where was I going with that?
So
about the retreat.
For 2017.
So we have 2 retreats. We do 2 retreats a year. This year was our first year we completed a spring retreat and a fall retreat. We just had our fall retreat last weekend, and we had 7 women completed and 2 men.
Wow.
And it was beautiful. It's not even, beautiful isn't even the word. It was amazing. And just to see them come on Friday with so much fear and like, I really don't want to go there, but I'm trusting these people I don't even know. Right. But most importantly, they're trusting Jesus. And then to see them on Sunday morning, we do a memorial service for their children, and it's just beautiful. We use Isaiah 61, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, that whole scripture, and we have stations of that. And we use lots of symbolic things to affirm their kingdom identity, and just they leave there completely understanding, I think, their identity, and have a restoration in the fullness of that. So
that's
yeah.
awesome. I have another question.
Yeah.
And this is like another question that it was just like, I was just thinking about right now. How society perceives abortion.
Yeah.
How they say people, like for instance, like if someone gets abused, or a young child gets, a young child that's like 10, 11, 12 ends up getting pregnant by a rapist or an abuser. What can you say about concern? Like, because I know everybody has circumstances, and everybody sometimes gets pregnant, and they get pregnant by accident, or however they want to call it. I would like your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a tough one, and that's something that I've really had to really pray about and ask myself, where do I stand on that? Because that is a hard. If you're 12 years old and you got raped and it's incest and you're pregnant, that's terrible. But I have to come back to the fact that a life is a life, and God created all life and not to be discarded. And even that baby that was formed out of an evil act still has a right to life. And just there's adoption.
Yeah.
There are other options besides murdering our children. And don't hear me, that is tough. That is tough.
Yes,
and man, that is a hard thing. I think, and I don't really know how to advocate this, but we do have a morning after pill. And I'm not saying that, I don't really know, I have to really think about how I feel about that. But I do think if you were raped and you you report it and you go, they give you that pill, it prevents pregnancy. So it's preventing something from happening. I believe it prevents it before the egg and the sperm can even conceive. I think is an option so that you're not faced with a pregnancy from a rape. But how many women probably go to the report it? I don't know this
because of shame too.
And it could be you're being molested by a family member,
for prolonged.
So you can't do that. I understand that. So I have to hold the ground with the Word of God, and just that He formed you in your mother's womb, and that you have a destiny, and it doesn't. That child is a unique individual with its own DNA, and we don't have a right to decide how to end the life. I think the same thing too for someone who would find out they're pregnant with a child that could possibly have a birth defect, and the doctors will encourage termination.
I've seen that too.
And I think that this is where, and again, that is a horrific decision that you have to make. But I think the way I would choose to just bring the child into the world, and if I have 5 minutes to hold that baby before it takes its last breath, then that's the right thing to do.
And you know what? My sister-in-law, one of my nephews were going to be born with a condition. And when you just said that, brought me back to that.
Yeah.
And they told her if she wanted an abortion, she said no.
Yeah.
She went through the whole pregnancy, her whole 9 months.
Yeah.
And I was there for the birth. And I got to hold him. And she went through a lot after, grieved a lot, but as a mother, a love of her child, I can't even express on how she did that, because she could have aborted, but she didn't. She didn't, and that is such a beautiful thing that she has done that, and I really applaud her for that, because I don't know. Or how your situation is. I'm not in your shoes, so I don't know how you felt at that moment. You know, and how somebody can come about that, and just like when I hear things like that, it's a beautiful thing, because sometimes it takes a real strength to do something like that.
Especially when doctors are telling you, well, this is what's going to happen, you know, if you keep the baby.
And how many stories have you heard where doctors say that and the baby's, it's minor?
Yeah.
Or it's or God heals. God can still heal. And sometimes He doesn't. And I think with your sister, right?
My sister-in-law.
Your sister-in-law. Like what a beautiful testimony that she can now have to share and encourage other women in that situation, or just her relationship with God. I don't know if she's a believer of God, but...
No, but God has been with her, and I know.
Yeah. But I mean, well, even to know that God was with me in that, and that would further increase your faith in some way, or a relationship. Like, nothing is lost. He uses every little bit of our pain. And I think that we don't think about, like, what can he do in my heart with this hard decision that I have to walk through? I couldn't imagine carrying a baby that you know is not going to live but 5 minutes once it's outside my womb, and having to give birth and go through all that heartache of, as you're pushing out a baby, and that pain that you know, and it's going to be worth it. Well, you know, you're not going to have it. You're not leaving this hospital with a baby. That's tough.
It is.
That's strength, though.
It is.
That's
It is
courage.
strength.
And so but I think at the end of the day, as a mother, I would feel better knowing that I let that baby leave on God's terms.
Yeah.
And not mine.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Good question. You know, one of the things that we really do at our Deeper Still retreats with the memorial service is that in our society we don't honor aborted children, and that's why we're really intentional we have a legit memorial service, because we want to give aborted children dignity and honor. And we really, as a team, as a Deeper Still team with the ministry, we allow them that. And it is so beautiful. On this past Sunday, one of our male, we call them honored guests, one of our male honored guests, he's in his late 20s, and again, girlfriend had the abortion, and on the day of abortion, basically came out of the clinic and handed him a picture of the ultrasound. And this young man is torn up, because he didn't want it to happen, but he was letting her, which most men feel that it's not their place. And that's such a lie, because it is their place.
Well, basically giving, a woman, she has her rights.
Authority,
she has her rights. This is her body.
Yeah.
This is her decision.
Yeah. But when we, at the memorial service, there's a part in the exchange where they cast their red rose into a fire. We have a little fire burning. And to symbolize, as far as the east is to the west, your sins and your transgressions are forgiven. And he pulls the ultrasound picture out of his pocket.
Wow, he throws it.
And he kissed it. And he cried and he wept. And the team member that led him to that part gave him time to release in his heart. And he burned that picture with the rose, because he just wants to let all that go and move forward from, And it was so... I could cry thinking about it.
Right.
It was just so beautiful. But
That just gave me chills.
yeah,
Even describing it just has my heart and just like in awe.
Yeah.
And just in awe.
Because men don't like to be vulnerable either.
No, they don't.
No.
No,
That's
no,
why our
no.
number ratios are always higher with women than men.
They're like, I'm doing
Well,
it
men
on
can
my
be
own.
sensitive.
Right.
Men can be more
They
sensitive
can,
than men.
but being around a lot of women that's
Yeah.
been through it, like, I know that had to be hard for him too, but it was something that was eating him up inside.
You know what's beautiful? At the end of the weekend, and we had a young girl as young as 23 and a woman as old as 71. And then there are two men were somewhere in 20s and 30s. And they end up, by the end of the weekend, the women apologize to the men, and the men apologize to the women.
That's awesome.
And say, please forgive me for that. And it is like, and us as team, we like, we had a team this time of 18 of us. We were standing around like, it's so beautiful.
Awesome.
But it is, and it's really watching God come into this place and do this supernatural exchange of restoration in really 3 days, which is the exact amount of time it took to raise Jesus, right? So I mean, like,
Yeah. Ooh.
so it's amazing, and I am so honored to be able to lead the chapter. And so in 2020, we're gonna have our next lineup for our lineup. We're saying, you guys have me all like podcast on our
That's
next,
okay. That's
our
okay.
next retreat. Our next retreat is April of 2020. I think it's the 24th to 26th, and we have our retreats at Camp Mount Gretna. So it's right outside of Lebanon County. It's only like 40 minutes from the Reading area, but it's a beautiful place. And so, if you're listening and you need a retreat and you want to come check it out, and even if you've had other inner healing with your abortion, or you've never even thought that you needed healing, I would say check out one of our retreats, because it's amazing. It's life-changing. You know what it really does, too? I know for me, I love to worship. I love worship music.
I love it.
So do
Yeah,
I.
I just love
music.
to
Oh my
I
goodness.
love to sing and worship God. And there was before my healing with abortions, I still felt dirty. And there's this place of entering into the throne room with Christ that I felt there was this distance between. Well, after my retreat and after I was able to heal those places of my heart, and he just set me free, free to worship.
Yes.
And so the intimacy in worshiping him, there's no ceiling anymore.
That's awesome.
It's just like I can come up close and dance with them, or I can sit on, Papa's lap, or I can, all that. Like I
You're
couldn't
free.
do that before.
You're free.
I'm free. I'm healed.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't do all that before. And really, it's a place that we invite them to go. And again, some people that come to the retreats, all different, areas spiritually, but as long as they believe in God and they're willing to open up to Jesus, yeah, because he does amazing things.
Oh yeah,
That's
he
awesome.
does.
Amazing
Oh,
things.
then.
Yeah.
I love Papa. Papa is amazing.
Yeah.
And why he can
Yeah.
really, and you can get true freedom from that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Look at what he
Yeah.
has done to you, and you know,
Yeah.
look what he has done to us.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Yeah.
believe that there's true
It's
freedom
real,
in that.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I love that everybody's story is different.
Yeah.
Everybody's story is different, but it all ends the same, redemption. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. And viewers and listeners, we will have all the details in regards to the retreat in the bio on our website. We'll also list the websites that you guys can go check it out. It's godeeperstill.org, and I'll also include it in the summary for the live as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So before we actually wrap up, we do ask all our guest speakers, and you can take as much time as you want.
Oh no, I'm trying to whittle it down in one sentence. Yeah. Yeah.
But I thank you for actually coming out and speaking on behalf of your experience and
thanks for having
your
me.
wonderful
Yeah.
experience with abortion and just how everything came together and how it's actually gave you freedom, you know,
Yeah.
from holding all that in and tucking it in and not knowing how to love yourself.
Yeah.
And it gives other women hope, you know, to actually be able to take time to focus on their self before focusing on everyone else,
Yeah.
especially men,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
when you go through something. And I appreciate you for coming out.
Thank you.
But what makes you uncommon?
Well, you know, I really, when you asked me that question, I kind of like sat with the Lord a little bit, and I was like, what makes me uncommon? And the first word that came into my heart was transparency. And I think that when I have an opportunity to sit with, women that I minister with, and they're always like, oh, you're just so vulnerable, and you don't judge, and, and you're just so transparent in just my own past. And so I think, what makes me uncommon is that I choose to live a lifestyle of transparency and freedom, and I don't allow fear of the enemy to stand in the way of my destiny and my calling. And I remember I heard this quote one time from John Eldredge, and it says, I hope I can quote it right, it says, your lifelong story is a brutal assault on your heart by the one who knows who you can be and fears you. And I think that if we get that paradigm shift in our mind, that I am believing lies about myself that keep me from being my destiny, it's empowering. So I like to speak truth into people's lives and pour out the gold in them and just encourage them to move forward out of their, not to live in the past, but we have to sometimes go back to the past to go forward.
Yes.
And there's no fear in that when you hold hands and you lock arms with Jesus and let him lead the way. So it's probably more than you were thinking. But
Nah, that was deep. That was dope.
all right, cool.
That was good. Did you have anything for us?
I don't know. Thanks for the opportunity.
And I love your transparency and how even though like are with their questions,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it takes a person that they don't want to answer it. But I love that, like you said, your transparency with me and what makes you uncommon, and I love that. I love that you were just so uncut, raw. So
Well, you declared that in this. Yeah.
and I think sometimes that's what we need to be more transparent with people, period, especially now in society.
Right.
Because I know a lot of people, they think that we're criticizing them, and sometimes it's not about us trying to criticize you. It's just sometimes like we're just trying to look out for you and like, hey, this is how it is, and everybody has different situations and circumstances, and everybody goes through things differently. People stuff it.
Yeah.
Some people don't. Some people want to deal with it right away. And thank you. It was beautiful to hear your story.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I hope it's inspiring. I hope that there's anyone listening and they are suffering with an abortion wound, that they'll look us up. Or even you, hey, I always tell women and men, and we have men on our team that would be more than happy to grab a cup of coffee or sit down and talk with any man wrestling with, do I need healing? And I do the same with women, even if they're not sure about a retreat because of the vulnerability and not knowing people. Hey, I'll meet you for a cup of coffee, or even chat with you on the phone, or email me. So just to break that ice is really important. But yeah, so I hope I get lots of fruit from this.
You will. We got you. We got you.
Yeah, but no, thanks for having me. It's great. Nothing better I want to do on a rainy Sunday.
Oh, it was raining when you did?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know it was raining. But anyways, yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, viewers, for watching us, and thank you for everyone's actually tuning in. Please be sure to like, share, and comment if y'all have any questions or concerns or have any topics you would like us to talk about. Please feel free to actually email us at uncommonwomenpodcast@gmail.com. And viewers, please remember to stay uncommon.
Love that.